don't even know where to start. Today is my sister's birthday. We're not allowed to contact her, and we're blocked on absolutely everything. We have 2 daughters. We don't just have one. All of the dancers that she danced with, someone else is controlling their lives.
I don't want to say I was in a cult.
How did I let myself get sucked into something like that?
Miranda and I knew that we always wanted dance to be a part of our lives.
California and dancing, it was their big dream.
Men and women travel to LA with their big dream of being on stage and just get wrapped up in a lot of things that aren't fair for them.
7M, an entertainment company founded by Robert Shinn, who's also the pastor of LA-based Shekinah Church.
This is a church, but they're also a management company. I just felt a little funny about that.
When he found the dancers, he saw all this opportunity to be like a world famous social media talent manager.
Social media, it was new. Like, man, I can do this and get money from my art. I want to do this.
He would always share whenever someone would get a deal.
All this money, it's all going to Robert.
It started out fairly innocuous, but the control slowly grew.
I could be in an unsafe environment.
This is a cult.
They would say, like, cut off your family because you need to work on yourself.
You have to die to your family in order to save them. As a man of God, I wasn't thinking that he would ever do anything wrong to me or someone.
When you raise somebody and all of a sudden to see a shell of your daughter, I don't know who this person is.
There were these sleuth accounts popping up. Former members were saying people suffered in his church for decades.
I felt so betrayed. It was awful.
I want Robert to never be able to do this ever again. Whatever you sow, you're gonna reap. That's what he teaches, right?
That was a trailer for the Netflix docu-series Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult. And this is Factual America. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood. Each week I watch a hit documentary and then talk with the filmmakers and their subjects. A group of prominent TikTok dancers are trapped in a cult masquerading as a management company called 7M. Among them is Miranda Wilking, whose family is desperately trying to get their daughter out. The Wilkings' efforts ultimately help other dancers escape and puts them in touch with former cult members. Miranda, unfortunately, remains tied to the cult. Join us as we talk with the series' award-winning director, Derek Doneen, and the producer who broke the story, Jessica Acevedo. We discuss the still unfolding story and the need for patience and understanding for the victims and their families, especially as the real healing has only just begun. Stay tuned. Derek Doneen and Jessica Acevedo, welcome to Factual America. How are things with you, Derek?
Great. Thank you so much for having us. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and how are you, Jessica?
Doing well. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, we were digging your plant earlier there behind you. So thanks again for, yes, exactly, framed well. So thanks again for coming on. To remind our listeners and viewers, we're talking about Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult, releasing on May 29th on Netflix. So great to have you on again, and congratulations for getting this thing made. I have a feeling this was quite a wild ride that you had making this. So we'll probably we'll definitely talk more about that here in a few minutes. But to get us started, Derek, maybe you can tell us what Dancing for the Devil is all about. Give us a synopsis.
Sure. Well, it's sort of known, I think, now to the public as the show about the TikTok cult.
Right.
But what you'll see as you watch the show is that it's a cult and a religious organization that's been around for close to 30 years.
Right.
So, of course, the show covers the cult and the cult leader, but really the perspective that we were interested in telling as we set out to make the show was one of the families who have lost loved ones into the cult and the experience of what it feels like to escape and to try and rebuild your life, rediscover who you are, your place in this world, where you're going, and to reconcile the experiences of your past and try and move forward. So it's sort of looking at the cult experience, I think, sort of specifically through those two lenses.
Okay. And just an aside here, a bit of a spoiler alert. I mean, it releases on May 29th. I think that's about the time this podcast is going to release. We'll have to follow whatever embargo there is on this. But if you haven't seen it and don't want to hear about revelations that may come up only in episodes, there's a 3-parter, right? So there's... and part of the storytelling, obviously, there are things that kind of come up in episodes 2 and 3. So for those who don't want to be surprised and haven't seen it yet, go and watch it. It's on, as we said, it's on Netflix. Everyone's got Netflix, so no excuses there. So go watch it and then come back and listen to the rest of this chat. But as Jessica, as Derek was pointing out, I mean, this is about the families, and yes, indeed, I the cover, everything, yeah, you think it's going to be, it is about the TikTok cult in essence, but there is so much more here, and it really begins, at least your journey or how you're telling the story begins with 2 sisters from Michigan, isn't that? Can you tell us a bit more about the Wilking sisters and their family?
Absolutely, yeah. I think for us, it was really important to try and tell the story the way that it was uncovering in real time. So this is an active story. And the way that we came about it was director and dance studio owner Tim Milgram, who owns T Millie up in North Hollywood, and a fellow producer, Brianna Frapphart, made me aware of the Wilkings live video. And so when I went and watched it, I think like most people, I was like, what is going on here? I was not familiar with the Wilking sisters prior to that. So as I started to kind of do a deeper dive, I fell in love with them. They were, endearing and super crazy talented. And just as someone that has 2 sisters myself, I just connected. But they had millions and millions of followers and incredibly talented, kind of blew up on the TikTok scene. And so obviously when that Instagram live came out, I think that there was a lot of people scratching their head, including myself, of like, wait, what is going on here? And what is this all about? So that's how we became familiar with the story, and then ultimately opened up a bigger, deeper dive into what this actually was.
Yeah. Okay. And Jessica, again, with this what was this? Just for those who don't know, what is this live video that many people came across? It was. I mean, I was going to ask later, but I mean, you've raised it. I think it's how basically they've lost touch with their daughter, and sister, haven't they?
Yeah. So the Wilkings made a live video. It was both Dean Kelly and Melanie Wilking. Ultimately, just kind of doing a call out and a cry out for help, essentially, and really to kind of bring people up to speed on what's going on, especially the people that were following the Wilkings account, as there was a lot of speculation and concern of what was going on with the sisters. So, the live was kind of what kickstarted the whole thing, but I ended up getting on the phone with the Wilkings after I had seen it, and we ended up talking for hours because, like I said, I wasn't familiar with the story and really wanted to kind of get caught up to speed. Like, what makes a person do that? You really have to be at a crossroad or feel like you have, you're at your ends in order to be able to do that. And so the Wilkings were, they updated me on about a year's worth of disconnect and concern that brought them to the place where they felt they needed to do something. And this was kind of their last resort, was going and doing an Instagram live.
Okay. So, I mean, Derek, as Jessica's noting there, I mean, they are incredibly talented. They've tapped into this phenomenon. They are part of this phenomenon that's maybe you could say a little bit more, because it takes them to LA, right? There's this sort of I guess there's a lot of things going on here in terms of this world, and for some of us, for me, I have to say personally, it was a bit of a revelation. I know some of this stuff's been around for a while, like crumping and stuff like that, but I wasn't. It was kind of interesting to see this whole scene that I wasn't aware of necessarily completely. And I do have teenagers. I should know more, but I don't.
But you are aware of the phenomenon of people coming to Hollywood in pursuit of a dream.
Exactly.
This is not a new story, and that is exactly what they did. These are two sisters who grew up dancing together, obviously insanely talented, and they sort of had this choice graduating from high school, pursue a higher education in the arts or pursue the dream now, and LA is sort of the place to do that. So that's what Miranda chose. She's the older sister. She chose to move to Los Angeles and pursue that dream as a dancer, and try and find a way to let her art become her career. And so as soon as Melanie was old enough, she did the same thing. They had been attached at the hip as dancers and sisters and best friends, their entire lives. And, that remained true into their adulthood and wanted to pursue that dream together. And when they were here, that's when they sort of started this brand called the Wilking Sisters. Really even before TikTok took off, on this platform called Musical.ly. And found an audience very quickly. I think obviously, their talent shines through, but it's their authenticity, as sisters, and and they let parts of their humanity and personality shine through in these videos. And it was, as we've started to, understand this culture is not just about talent, but it's about, it is about that personality and letting that shine and connecting and interacting with your audience. And they did that in a big way. And as soon as, Musical.ly sort of turned over into TikTok and started becoming really popular, they were sort of at the forefront of that wave. Capitalizing on that success and really growing rather quickly as a brand and a sister act.
And so that's, again, and I'm kind of walking us back from that that live video that the Wilkings did. But Jessica, this is where the sisters, or certainly Miranda, encounters 7M. Is it 7M Films, 7M Management? Anyway, 7M and this Shekinah Church. And talking about, as Derek was saying, decades of young, talented people have made their way to LA and Hollywood, and they, probably won't be the first and last time that an organization or people maybe take advantage of people of this of sort of this background. So what happens there? It's this interesting phenomenon that this church draws dancers to it that are extremely talented people to it, and actually is quite successful.
Oh yeah, I think that when people travel to LA, some of which, and they expressed this in the doc, some of the dancers that came forward were, they're coming here alone. They don't have their clique and their crew, and they're on the search for a community, if you will. And a lot of them really are Christians and grew up in the church and are believers. So as you can imagine, when like-minded people and talented dancers all come together and they're saying, hey, come hang out with us, but also, you have a similar walk with God that we do, and together we can have a safe space to not only create, but to also grow our relationship with God. You can understand how it could be alluring and how it could be attractive to someone that may not feel that they have their people and their space. So for the Wilking sisters, it was a little bit of that. Obviously, as you see, Miranda met B-Dash. A lot of this, a lot of the TikTok and Instagram community is about collaborations. And so when B-Dash came in and they were collaborating, and then ultimately invited them to these Bible studies, it kind of kick-started from there.
And I just want to add that, in addition to everything Jess just said, this is an organization that is not only offering community, but they're offering to take care of all the things that as a dancer you might not want to
Good
do
point.
or might
Yeah.
not be
Yeah.
equipped to do, which
Yeah.
is the production side, picking a location, picking costumes, filming, editing, posting. You have to be doing that every day. You have to be
Yeah.
posting content every day, and it's increasingly competitive in terms of the production value and making it look great. You have contracts coming in, potential brand opportunities coming in, sponsorships. So you really do need not just somebody managing the technical side, but somebody managing the business side for you. And, if you don't necessarily have the means to afford that or the know-how to navigate that in a new city, in a new industry, that can be incredibly intimidating. So to sort of have this place where it's all happening under one roof and you're being showered with love and praise and attention, and you get to just do it with like-minded young dancers, who are supporting you and uplifting you. I can understand, how that would be very alluring. Nobody sets out to join a cult, right? That's one of the things that we say a lot, right? It's not, and Robert doesn't sort of, or any of these cult leaders, they don't, come at you with, sort of, full blast with all of their sort of manipulations on display. It's little by little, slowly by slowly inching you in over time. So you're not even realizing it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I mean, what he does, we've had docs on before about David Koresh, and we've had ones about, in a different way, Jeffrey Epstein. So people who are predatory, it's very similar tactics, obviously. One thing I would note is you mentioned the content word. What struck me too is the pressure these kids are under. That's all they didn't talk about dancing. They didn't talk about, I mean, they do, but it's always, we made content. We had to do content. It was like, it's like they're having to produce a daily newspaper or magazine or something. They're just constantly having to produce. So as Derek was saying, there's this attraction that certainly for a community that has some of this scene has definitely a faith-based element. He's already mentioned all the support that someone who's trying to make it big in this world needs on a daily basis. But the reality is much more sinister, isn't it? And this live video comes out, and then things start happening. That's when, at least for a lot of the dancers you were able to bring on and interview, that's when the penny really drops for them, doesn't it? And what is it? And then they mentioned things that they saw that said, wait a minute, we realize something's crazy. What were some of those things? Because they weren't. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, so it really was. So after the Instagram Live, there was all these other accounts that came out that started to report on it. And that's when we started to see former members coming forward. And that's when we started to see a little bit of a response. So when we saw that one of these accounts would post something, it seems that there was a response within the church or within the dancers. And there was a lot of defense happening, and that was their truth, and that's what they believed at the time. And so I think for them, and as we started to see these former members come forward, we realized it was far more sinister, and it went deeper and darker than we could have ever imagined just based on the live initially. So the dancers had shared with us that after seeing some of the accounts and seeing some of what was being put out there, it was that light bulb moment for them, because when you're in it, you're isolated. But when you start to hear other accounts come in and they start to parallel or mirror what you're experiencing, like the control and, some, the kind of financial abuse and the control that happens there, it started to click for them where they're like, wait a minute. And this particular organization is meant to not share. You're not supposed to really talk to anyone else. Everything is controlled. The only people that you're communicating with for the most part is your mentor, from what we hear. Yeah. That it wasn't until they were like, wait a minute, let's sidebar here and start sharing some of those experiences that they realized, wait, that's happening to you too. That's happening to me. And it just kind of pulled a thread for them and ultimately unraveled what they had thought was meant to be a faith-based, positive environment kind of turned sinister.
Okay. I think that brings us to a good point for a quick early break for our listeners and viewers. So we'll be right back with Derek Doneen and Jessica Acevedo, two of the filmmakers behind Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult, releasing on May 29th on Netflix. You're listening to Factual America. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or X to keep up to date with new releases or upcoming shows. Check out the show notes to learn more about the program, our guests, and the team behind the production. Now back to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. I'm here with Derek Doneen and Jessica Acevedo. We're talking about their docu-series, Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult, releasing on May 29th, 2024 on Netflix. So Jessica, we were just talking, and it's so something that definitely comes out. This was all going. So you'd already there'd been this live event. You've got in touch with the families. There's a very interesting story. You are at this stage, Derek. Are you on board at this stage filming when this is all happening, or does that come later?
No, well, at that point Jess hadn't started shooting yet. I was not on the team yet.
Right.
She, was made aware of this. So it was at WVE and took the project to Netflix.
Right.
And Netflix said, we'd love to, partner you with a team that's made more of these, what they call sort of premium documentaries, docu-series before. And that's how she was then connected with Dirty Robber and myself. And we were sort of kindred spirits from the jump. We really saw eye to eye on the vision for the project, but also more importantly for how we would be communicating with the subjects. This is obviously something where we're catching people in the midst of, so we're coming into a story as it's unfolding, right? So that means we're catching people sort of at their most vulnerable, people who are sort of living trauma as it's happening, and that is a very delicate place to be. And what I think we bonded over from that first conversation was really how we were going to ensure that we could tell the story that we wanted to tell in a way that protected the subjects and gave them a safe space, that they felt safe and comfortable, that we weren't pressuring people into doing that we were really going to invest the time up front before we, started asking about how we were going to be filming or showed up with cameras or a crew of any kind, to A, make sure they were comfortable, and B, make sure they were ready, for everything that would come along with that. And so it wasn't until, so Jess started around January, February working on this of 2022. I came in around May, I'd say. And it wasn't really until November that we started shooting, and in that time there was, we were talking to the subjects, every couple days, and continue to. We've been done shooting for 6 months. That relationship, is ongoing, and with the show coming out in less than a week now, checking in, making sure that they continue to feel comfortable, that they continue to feel prepared for everything that might happen. These relationships are something we invest in, much. And that goes, far deeper than what you see on screen.
Yeah, and so that, because that's what struck me. Obviously, obviously, as you say, there's an unfolding story. You're in the middle of an investigation, really. And Jessica, I mean, at the heart of we've talked about one set of sisters, but another set of sisters is also at the heart of this story, isn't it? And is that and that's goes this is what you were referring earlier to, some of these people that started coming forward and you started encountering. Is that about the time when this happened? And maybe tell us a little bit more about these two sisters.
Absolutely. So again, because it was unraveling in real time and this was active, Melanie and Priscilla was still in the church when we started this process. So I was, yes. And so were the dancers. So that actually all happened while we were filming. Yeah. So with Melanie, when she had came forward, she had just kind of through social media expressed that she was a former member and that she experienced her own abuse, that there was a lawsuit, a wage claim lawsuit that she had filed. And so those reports started coming out. So when we connected with Mel, as you can imagine, that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of trust that needs to be built for someone that has experienced so much to want to open up. And when Mel did, again, this has been a very emotional process as well, as you're hearing these stories and as this trust is being earned. And I'm so thankful for Melanie trusting us to share this story. But it was really powerful. And I think she was a huge part of, and an important part of this story. And so then she expressed to us too that her sister was still in the church, and that we felt it paralleled a lot of what we were seeing with the Wilkings as well, and what Melanie Wilking was experiencing.
Right.
So can I interject for 1 second, Jess? So what she said to us, in fact, I just wanted to throw this in there really quickly. What she said at the time was that she'd already grieved for her sister, that she had no hope of ever reconnecting with her at that point. And what we sort of came to learn was that that's what she had to sort of tell herself, because otherwise she would be consumed by grief and really strong emotions day in and day out. So she sort of had to tell herself, of course, she was still holding out hope in the back of her mind. And you see that as they do start to rebuild their relationship later in the show. But at the time, there was no hope that her sister was going to get out, certainly not be part of the documentary. That was not at all in the realm of possibility in her mind.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I mean, so what so you have the two sisters, two sets of sisters, and a lot of what this film is about sisterhood. But you've got, I mean, they're just, like we're all different. There's different types of families, but this is, I mean, I guess if you were to start this film, if as a viewer, you would be thinking, well, if any of these sisters are going to reunite, it's going to be the Wilkings, but it's actually, that's still, it's not that they haven't reunited, but there's still that very distant relationship. But this other set of sisters, I mean, that is what you've captured. Is there's some really, I mean, the Wilkings are, like you said, very genuine and talented, and yet these are little girls and now young women who've grown up in front of a camera, and yet you've got the Melanie and Priscilla, who are certainly were anything but spending their lives in front of a camera, and yet they've got some what you've been able to capture, and actually I know with their support and approval, obviously, is some very raw emotions to get on in the film. I mean, it's quite amazing, and it's even more amazing considering that Priscilla was not even. I just assumed she had left just before you had got involved, but she is in the very, very early days. Because I guess maybe to put the context, so you can say a little bit more about it. Is, I mean, Melanie left more than 10 years ago, and Priscilla's been part of this thing for over 20 years. Isn't that right?
Yeah, 23.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is, I mean, a shout out to, I can't imagine what Priscilla has had to go through. I mean, you show parts of that, but what she has gone through to get this far is amazing.
It's really remarkable. And I actually had dinner with her last night. Even the strides she's made since we stopped filming with her continues to impress me. Her ability to almost take a step back and reflect on her experience objectively is, it's very inspiring. But what I'll say is that after she got out, there were, we met her pretty quickly. I think there were a couple months where, she didn't tell anybody. She was just out and hiding.
Right.
And, slowly she started to sort of emerge. And, we had lots, Jess and I were on the phone with her, every couple nights, and we would just listen. It wasn't really us talking other than offering a little bit of support, so much as giving her a space to just vent and to be a sounding board for her. And of course, as filmmakers, I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, like this is exactly what I want to be capturing.
Right,
This is what
right.
the show is about. You know,
Right.
it's seeing this journey from where she is right now, which is obviously broken, and quite damaged, to somebody who we hope will go on this healing journey, who will be able to see on the other side, right? Good storytelling is always finding
Right.
somebody here and then taking them there, right? Going on a journey with a person. And it's rare in the documentary space to be able to do that in real time. Usually you're finding somebody who's already on the other end of that journey, and
Exactly.
it's a reflective look back, and you take the audience through that, you know, in retrospect. And here we had the opportunity to capture it. And so of course, as filmmakers, Jess and I are like, oh my God, but that's not something you can rush, right? Like even though we wanted to do that selfishly to tell a good story, it wouldn't have been right. You know, she wasn't ready for that. And so, you know, we had to be patient and wait until she was. And then as she became ready to start letting us in and sharing that, you know, those first shoots with her was just me. It was just me. I was running sound. I was running camera. Didn't bring anybody else into the room, just to create a very, you know, intimate environment with someone that she already trusted. And, you know, over time she would open up a little bit more and a little bit more. And ultimately, of course, then we did shoot a master interview. But for many of these scenes, it was these verite scenes that we shot, it was just me and a sound person, you know, and that was really the ethos that we carried into production, was let's create, again, as intimate an environment as we can, as safe a space as we can. And even then, you know, the sound person would mic them, and then that person and Jess would go into another room and they'd be listening, but they wouldn't necessarily be in the field of view of the subject. So we tried to create as light a footprint as we possibly could, so that, you know, ultimately I just ended up kind of blending into the environment after a while.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point you raise as well, is if this is, you know, usually you come in and they've already made that journey and you're telling it in retrospect. She's still making this journey, and so are others, obviously. When do you call quits? When do you say that's the end of the project, you know? How do you come to that decision?
If I could just jump in and add that, so again, because this is happening in real time, and I think a lot of it was like Derek and I were learning. What I think the perception is that when someone gets out of a high controlled environment, they're free. And in our minds, we learned very quickly that's not the case. That there is the deprogramming, there is the trauma, there's so much recovery that has to happen. And that's where that healing journey really begins. And so that's rare to capture, because it's such a vulnerable time in people's lives, that we also needed to make sure that we were handling with extreme care and caution. So did want to just add that on
exactly.
the vulnerability.
And on that point, I mean, they have that incredible conversation over lunch, I think, and about Priscilla not showing up or on time for her niece's party, and it's this incredible, and it as you say, it shows the brokenness and everything. I mean, that must have, I mean, how did you handle that one? I mean, how did they feel about having that I mean, obviously they've agreed to it, but how did they feel about having being such raw emotions showing on screen?
Yeah, I mean, we knew that conversation was bound to happen at some point, because every time we'd been with them, they both avoided having it, you know. And you see in that first interaction when they first reunite, and they have 25 years to catch up on, well, at least, you know, 10, 11 since the last time they'd seen each other. But really they had all, you know, Melanie had started a new family and had a daughter. There's so much to talk about and to catch up on, and they just couldn't find a way to get on the same page and let their guard down, you know, and open up to each other. And you know, over time we saw them starting to interact more and more, but neither of them were really ready or willing to dive into their past. And so we sort of knew that the moment would come eventually. And of course we hoped that, you know, we would be in the room when it happened, and we were lucky enough to be there. And as you said, it happened over something else, right? They didn't set out to have that conversation. It was about Melanie's daughter, and why were you late to the party? And that, of course, is the sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, and that punctured the ice and sort of allowed all of these emotions to come flooding out. I think it goes back to the conversation we were just having, in that, that trust that I just feel so humbled and grateful to have earned alongside Jess with these subjects. It doesn't happen overnight. That conversation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens because of the months that we had been, talking to these people, working with these people, that they felt comfortable enough to be truly themselves and to be as vulnerable as you see them being. Of course, knowing that we are there and we're in the room. And like I said, I feel really honored to have been a part of that, because even though it's a very difficult conversation, it's beautiful. And often you need to have those difficult conversations with the people you love the most to break through and to bridge gaps and bring yourselves closer together. And the fact that they were, willing to do it with each other, let alone, as part of the documentary, was really moving.
Yeah. And then I think obviously also the other subjects, especially Jessica was mentioning earlier, the dancers who hadn't actually left the cult yet until you guys were, she was on the project. I mean, they opened themselves up. I mean, we're talking about a world where that may not be from a career standpoint, necessarily the thing to do, but they certainly do. And I thought that was quite impressive as well.
Yeah, we're really thankful that they also trusted and humbled that you can see young people in a very vulnerable state. I think a lot of it too was there was a lot of speculation. There was a lot of people talking about it, and taking that power back, taking the strength to say, I'm going to share my own story. And like you said, is difficult for young people, let alone young people in a spotlight on social media. So I think it was just it's refreshing, and it's so incredibly powerful, and again, so appreciative that they trusted us. And like Derek said, this is months and months of conversation, but really it's like at the end of the day, it was a choice that they had to make. And it was not an easy one for anyone in the documentary, even for the Wilkings, who are in the spotlight. For the dancers, people can assume certain things, but it wasn't easy. And it was not a overnight decision that this was something they were going to participate in.
Yeah, I think it's especially worth applauding, the dancers, because they, as influencers, right, as people who are creating that content, they are in 100% control of their image, right? That is an image that they curate, that they, feed to their audience, to the world. And it is, one part of them, or multifaceted sort of parts of themselves that they choose to share. But it is 100% in their control. So to say, I'm going to be part of something where I don't have that control, I sort of have to surrender that control to another team of storytellers and filmmakers, and just trust that they are going to capture who I am with honesty and sincerity. That was a big leap of faith. And we did not take that lightly.
Okay. As we've said, this saga continues. And rightfully, we haven't talked much about Robert Shinn, the cult leader. But what is the latest on this whole situation? Because does his cult, his organization, carry on as it has been, or where are we? Because I know you part of the series is this attempt to bring him to justice. We won't go into all the details there, but that again is very impressive in terms of the strength of the subjects, especially Priscilla. But can you give us an update? Because you're saying you're constantly in touch with everyone, and maybe give us a idea of where things stand at the moment.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, not much has changed since we stopped production. And the sort of update cards you see at the end of the show are largely, accurate today. We don't have direct contact with people inside who are feeding us information, so it is a bit of speculation, but we can say with reasonable certainty and confidence that Miranda, Nick, Slavic, the dancers who were in as we were shooting are still sort of technically in, right? Meaning that they are in daily communication with Robert and their mentors and part of the organization, attending services, and that they, even though 7M as an entity is not, I think, technically in use anymore, effectively the hierarchy within the organization has remained exactly the same, that they are still managing their careers, and we see in their collaborations. I mean, they're still collaborating with the exact same people, doing the same dances with the same costumes, in similar locations and with similar music. And we know in talking and keeping up with the families that, the Nick, still unfortunately, has very, very little contact with his family. His mom and dad remain heartbroken. And Miranda has more contact with her family than Nick, but it's still under the control of Robert, we assume, when she talks to them. What she says when she sees them. Again, this is sort of an educated speculation, but it is all sort of in sort of conjunction with Robert's direction, or all under Robert's direction, I should say, or her mentors.
Right. But yet, people, as you document, victims have come forward and have at least gone to the police with their
and there are many others who've come forward to us who we didn't feature in the documentary with very similar identical accusations across the board. So it's worth noting that, while we chose to focus the story on the subjects that you see in the show, we did a lot of background research and talked to a lot of people. And as we've been doing this, more and more people have come forward. And I imagine after the show comes out, we'll continue to hear those stories.
Okay. So, I think we're coming close to the end of our time together, but so from this whole experience, I'll start with you, Jessica. what's maybe the main lesson or thing you take away from this project?
For me, it's about having, for me, my takeaway is just an outpour of appreciation for people coming out of high control environments. I think that it's one, we want to quickly label someone and put them in a box. And the assumption is that people are fine and that they're okay. And I think it was really about having more grace and patience and challenging myself and people to continue to dig deeper, to ask the questions, to have patience and meet people where they're at and be more open-minded. Because you just never really know what someone is going through. What you can see on social media could look like one thing, but really behind it is worth asking how someone's doing. And so that was something that I learned from this, that I hope that people take away from this, and that people continue to dig in and ask the questions. And
And you, Derek?
I agree with all that. And I just hope that the show inspires people who might be going through something similar. And it doesn't say this sometimes, it doesn't have to be another religious group. It could be, or a highly controlled group. It could be a domestic partnership, where you feel trapped and you feel like you can't escape and you're sort of inextricably tied to another person or to a group, to find, strength and the courage and the bravery of the subjects who came forward and not, and found the strength they needed to leave and start a new chapter in their lives. Again, my hope is that people can see that and that can inspire some sort of strength within to do what they need to do to get themselves out of a situation like that. Just remain humbled and moved by the courage of our subjects, and was sort of continuously surprised. I learned so much about what a recovery like this looks like. And I think in many ways, you talked about the sort of the story of these two sisters. And I think, the story of the Lee sisters is almost a cautionary tale for what the story of the Wilking sisters could look like years from now if they aren't able to get her out, and so I just look, every day I just think about the families. I think about, the victims, and my hope is just they find the peace that they're looking for, and whatever form that might be, and that to me sort of means more than anything else. People watching this, any other sort of reaction that might or might not come to the documentary, it's again the hope that the subjects, because they're still living it. We stopped rolling, but the story is still unfolding, for them every single day. And so I just hope that they find the peace they're looking for.
I should really stop there, but I am going to ask you one last question, because that was both of you very poignant. What's next for you, Jessica? What is after this? I know you're going to probably, you probably want a break, but I don't know. Do you have anything in the works that you can tell us about?
It's funny that you say that, because there's never really a break in production, but I think after this project, it was so emotional for me, and it was challenging at times that, I work with Wilmer Valderrama, and he was constantly checking in with me throughout this process, because he saw how difficult it was. And he actually asked, he was like, "Hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling?" And I was expressing to him, and he was like, "Well, why don't we just take a break? Let's just take a minute and just refocus and just regroup." We do have a game show right now in development at CBS, which we're really excited about. But I love creating. I love meeting people and diving into stories. I share that story because at the same breath that Wilmer said that, I came across a story about a murder trial that was happening, also active. And so I said, "Thank you. However, there is this murder trial." And so Wilmer's like, "Okay, I'm going to support you. I'm going to get behind you, but let's just really take a breath." So yes, continuous development on my end. We have a lot of really great projects that I'm excited to be taking out after this, but am trying to find a nice combination of, these real active stories while balancing it with a fun game show for families.
Okay, excellent. And Derek?
You have a lot of filmmakers on. I think you sort of understand how the documentary space works. We always have a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak. We sort of have to. So I'm no different. I'm also an editor. I'm editing a show also for Netflix right now, and I have 3 to 5 other projects in development. I have a feature documentary that I am developing with Chloe Zhao's company about a motorcycle stunt rider in the traveling carnival that I'm excited about, and then 2 series, one that's sort of a Hollywood conspiracy story, and one that is another sort of true crime story, and I'm really excited about both, and the partners I get to work with. Really, I think the best part of our job is the people that we get to meet, and whose stories we get to tell along the way, and the places that takes us. And always looking, always searching, always writing and developing and thinking about what's next. And yet we don't know exactly. We'll sort of see where the chips fall.
Well, I'm sure they'll fall well for you, and for you, Jessica, as well. Thanks so much for being on. I'd love to have you on again when some of these other projects, not the game show. Well, I'm happy to talk about a game show, but when these other projects fall, we'd love to have you back on. So just remind our listeners and viewers, we've been talking with Derek Doneen and Jessica Acevedo about their docu-series Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok Cult, releasing on May 29th on Netflix. Check it out. Thanks again for joining us on Factual America. A big shout out to everyone at Intersound Audio in York, England for their great studio and fine editing and production skills. A big thanks to Amy Ord, our podcast manager, who ensures we continue getting great guests onto the show and that everything otherwise runs smoothly. Finally, a big thanks to you, our listeners. Please keep sending us feedback and episode ideas, whether it is on YouTube, social media, or directly by email. And please also remember to like us and share us with your friends and family, wherever you happen to listen or watch podcasts. This is Factual America, signing off. You've been listening to Factual America. This podcast is produced by Alamo Pictures, which specializes in documentaries, television, and shorts about the U.S. for international audiences. Head on down to the show notes for more information about today's episode, our guests, and the team behind the podcast. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Be the first to hear about new productions, festivals showing our films, and to connect with our team. Our homepage is factualamerica.com.